Welcome to this Java Break with Basis. Today is the third of our series of customer successes with BBX. Today I'm going to be joined by Mike Quagliarello from EMQUE Consultants, and I'm also going to be assisted by Nick Decker, our engineering supervisor. And we're going to look at EMQUE's application that they've moved to the browser user interface. Let's look at the series technology overview. During the series, we're looking at varied deployments from large user count Pro 5 systems to moderate 5 to 25 user count Visual Pro 5 systems to large user count BBJ systems. We'll also be looking at varied features that have been deployed and employed by these applications: data replication, triggers, XCore, Barista, or the browser user interface. Today, we'll be looking at those 5 to 25 user count Visual Pro 5 systems and the browser user interface being used in conjunction with the Visual Pro 5 apps. So let's look at our session agenda. I'll give you some background to EMQUE Consultants, talk about the business challenge that their customers faced, what solution EMQUE brought to the table, and talk a bit more about the success story that generated, the publicity that they gained from the successful deployment of the application. And then we'll turn to the new challenge, being able to move that application from an iPad to a smartphone. And we'll show off a prototype that Basis has put together to show how CSS can improve the application on a smartphone. We'll summarize what we've covered, and then we'll take your questions. So let's give you some more background to EMQUE. As their motto says, systems to build on. They're a construction-based software company based in Hop Hog, New York, located on Long Island, provide an integrated suite of applications which they customize for their various clients based on their accounting, job costing, payroll, estimating, purchasing, service orders, and project management software. Their vertical specialization is on commercial construction industry, and this is what their Visual Pro 5 app looks like. This is the payroll time entry screen, and you'll see an iPad version of that in a minute. The business challenge was for their clients working on construction sites, no computer infrastructure is generally available. Communication back to the admin office is via phone or via printouts. Manually written work tickets, worksheets, which can get grubby, which may not be legible. And it becomes a paperwork nightmare. Out-of-date information, inaccurate data capture that may take place a long time after the work is actually completed, which lead to inevitable billing delays and payment delays. So the solution is to have mobile access to their Visual Pro 5 construction app back in the administration office. They're able to do this with the wireless tablet, with the iPad in their case. Form factor is not too dissimilar to the desktop. Of course, the interface is now not through a mouse, but via touch, but accessible via the internet. It's cost-effective, cross-platform, resource-efficient, easy to maintain, delivering significantly reduced paperwork, and intuitive for the users to use, and easily implemented with a smooth rollout via the iPad application through the BUI functionality with Basis technology. So how did they do it? Well, they started with a Visual Pro 5 app and introduced BUI. That necessitated the installation of BBJ on the server, required revisiting the app. After all, they needed to use some new tools for the new environment, no mouse, a touch environment, and they needed to adjust the smaller real estate of the mobile devices. Let's hear from Mike.
When we moved to GUI world in the 1990s, we revisited the business processes that were automated in our character systems. And now as we move full throttle into BUI with new devices, we're building a better mousetrap once again.
Thanks, Mike. Let's recap on the deployment. Visual Pro 5 installed on the various desktop devices, all connected to the data via the Pro 5 data server. So what we then do is add BBJ to the same server, and now by utilizing the same business logic in the application, we're able to deploy the browser user interface application connected again to the same database controlled by the Pro 5 data server. So same business logic code running in the background, could even be Pro 5 programs that are launched by BBJ. After all, BBJ can run Pro 5 tokens. So the product rollout was that in the fall of 2010, the Foreman was released. It was a bolt-on module with the BUI connection to the Visual Pro 5 app. From the job site, the job foremen were empowered to write quotes, place orders, check inventory, and enter payroll data. It really addressed the construction industry paperwork monster. The advanced features offered by the foreman included drag and dictation for hands-free talk-to-text, signature capture feature, courtesy of the old Scribble program that Basis delivered for Visual Pro 5 many, many years ago, and those documents then were able to be emailed directly from the iPad to the customer. So this is what the material request form looked like on the iPad, and then the iPad version of that payroll entry that we saw earlier in Visual Pro 5. We went on to report on their success in the Advantage magazine article of 2010, the dawning of a new age of BUI apps at EMQUE, and then they subsequently rolled out the owner, released with a mobile capability to provide snapshot information of cash flow, receivables, and aging, ability to send statements via email from the iPad, and then additional specialty mods were made: cost reports, cash flow and income statements, view and email age receivables, and several other requested reports were generated for Mike's customers with the iPad. And they moved the estimating app to the browser user interface environment, and the Project Manager suite was released, with 7 large apps now ready and deployed on the iPad. What did that mean in terms of publicity and exposure for EMQUE? It generated a ton of industry interest. The Long Island Software and Technology Network in the spring of 2012 gave EMQUE an award for their cutting-edge work in wireless apps for the construction industry. Engineering News Record article came out in November of 2012. It's a high-end building magazine for contractors. Let's have a look at a news report on EMQUE Success.
A new iPod app is eliminating paperwork and making work easier for local construction companies. BIOS One's Jessica Fragoso tells us how it works in this week's Long Island Business News Report.
When construction firms are working on projects, managers tend to have a lot of paperwork to deal with. Benjamin Blank, project manager at the Donaldson organization, says he would usually have stacks of work tickets on his desk.
We used to have paper tickets. They're always a hassle. You always lose one or misplace one, or the handwriting you can't read.
But now a local software development firm has developed an iPad app to make life easier for foremen of construction companies. Hauppauge-based EMQUE Consultants has been working closely with commercial construction firms in the New York area for years. With the invention of the iPad, CEO Michael Quagliarello saw it as an opportunity to create apps that would help eliminate paperwork in the field.
From the time the actual work was incurred and cost was incurred to the time the bill came out could be weeks or a month later, and that's very typical. We shortened that cycle to 1 day.
The Donaldson organization, an interior contracting firm, began using the new app in January. Right now, the company is working on a big project, the Resorts World Casino in Queens, and Blank says the app has been making his job easier. He uses the app every day. It helps him keep track of the work, employees, and materials used.
Once it's done, I just hit OK. I just close it out, hit sign, save.
Then Blank can easily email a PDF of the ticket to whoever is supposed to receive it, and all the data is saved in the file on his computer.
I think it's going to help construction significantly, especially for subcontractors like us. We're trying to get all these extra work orders processed. It makes it easier, we can track it better, and it helps when we're trying to get paid and change orders.
Quagliarello says so far a dozen construction firms have already begun to use this new app. EMQUE has also created another app for the owners of the construction companies, allowing them to run their business from their iPads. In Hauppauge, Jessica Fragoso, BIOS One News.
So along with the publicity of their reward, as well as the Engineering News Record article, great publicity for EMQUE. But there was more. The highly publicized renovation of Madison Square Garden was being undertaken with several contractors who were EMQUE customers using the Foreman on the iPads, delivering a completely paperless solution, entering materials manually, downloading purchase orders from in-house servers to populate the work ticket, entering the description of the work and the number of hours, and creating the PDF for the customer to review and capture a signature to sign off on it. It would then add that to the PDF and destroy the capture as a security measure, and select and send that work order via email. Real-time information available internally for the accounting team to process and generate billing as quickly as possible. Processing time went from weeks to instantaneous. Much more efficient, delivering real-time entry, reducing rekeying errors, and using free Wi-Fi at certain sites, eliminating any cell phone charges. Of course, time never stands still in the technology world. So what is the next challenge? Let's hear from Mike.
Initially, the cost of iPads restricted us from selling more apps. Some of our clients might have 40 or more users of these initial apps, so the equipment cost was prohibitive in this soft economy. We began looking at how we could produce similar solutions on a smartphone. And once again, we found if we looked at our previous solutions to a problem and wiped the slate clean in our minds, we could design a solution again, but this time work on a smaller footprint. And we did. And our time entry app has raised a lot of eyebrows.
Thanks, Mike. So let's recap our new business challenge. Next steps is the need to accommodate smartphones. It'll expand the potential marketplace by lowering the cost of entry, but it brings on a new challenge of having to accommodate that smaller footprint with the smaller smartphone device. And of course, there are several major smartphone platforms. If you look at Apple, Android, BlackBerry, and now Windows. So what are non-BUI alternatives? If we decided not to write it in basis technology, what could we or should we do? We'd have to rewrite it natively in Objective-C for the Apple devices, and on Java for the Android devices, and .NET for the Windows devices, and C++ for the BlackBerry devices, if one was choosing the preferred platform for those various devices. Or you could rewrite it as a web app, which is exactly what BUI is, a web app. But you'd have to write the JavaScript and the HTML5. And of course, whichever route you take with your non-BUI alternatives, you're going to need to connect into that basis database via ODBC and JDBC to connect your Visual Profile app in the back office. In that case, of course, it would have to be ODBC. So what are the pros and cons of BUI versus the other alternatives? Well, the pros for BUI are exactly the same as the original challenge. The same language as the production application. All the same business logic can be reused. You can test and debug locally in both GUI or BUI. It gives you a single technology stack. Your read record and write record syntax still function. And it just works. The cons are, of course, you need to adjust to a smaller footprint. And that's probably where some of the challenge does come in. Your prototype BUI apps for EMQUE without any CSS look a bit like this. On the left-hand side, we see the login screen. And on the right, we can see the various list buttons we can use to enter the information of the user, the foreman, the various tasks by using the drop-down lists. And of course, if those render in the devices, on the left-hand side, we see an iPhone, on the right, a Motorola Admiral, which are quite widely used in the New York area. Let's hear from Mike
As
again.
the second half of 2012 approached, and we found ourselves mastering the nuances of BUI and the various devices we were working with, our attention turned to designing apps that were not only functionally efficient, but also look cool. We welcome CSS and BUI with open arms. This is not your father's business basic anymore, guys.
Thanks, Mike. Well, let's talk more about CSS. We can employ CSS to visually demarcate areas of the screen into the logical components, add icons for label information for those list buttons, use colors to indicate which list button has focused, show the disabled state of buttons, provide some animation, and you can style those buttons for increased visibility and impact. And of course, there's lots more. But let's have enough of me talking about it. Let me hand off now to Nick Decker, Basis's resident CSS expert, and see what he could do as a prototype for EMQUE's time entry module running on a smartphone.
EMQUE's new Foreman timesheet entry is a great example of how developers can build a GUI app in BBJ and deploy it in BUI so that customers can access the app when and where they need it. The timesheet entry BUI app is designed to run on a smartphone screen so that managers can enter and track their employees' time on the job site. The phone's limited screen size posed new challenges, but EMQUE decided to use BBJ list button controls almost exclusively for data entry to eliminate the need for a keyboard. The typical BBJ list button control presents the user with a drop-down list of options, but EMQUE configured theirs to tie in directly with the host operating system's select control. This provides a native interface for the user and, depending on the operating system, may provide additional navigation control as well. After successfully coding and deploying the timesheet entry BUI program, EMQUE provided BASIS with the raw ASCII resource files so that they could help address a secondary design challenge, providing an enhanced user interface via CSS. Let's take a look at some of the customizations that we've added to the application using cascading style sheets. We'll start by launching the BUI app in a mobile Safari session on an iPhone. The app loads quickly and presents us with the login screen. After providing the necessary credentials, we'll continue by defining the date, company, and employee. Notice that before a company is chosen, the Enter Time button on the bottom right is disabled, so it appears grayed out. The date defaults to today, so we'll start by selecting the company first. The Select Company control is a BBJ list button that has been configured to use the native browser list control, so tapping on it will result in the iPhone's picker control sliding up from the bottom instead of having the control itself present a drop-down list of options. Note that before I select a company or an employee, the title of the BBJ list button is dark gray. After selecting a value, the picker slides out of the way, and the BBJ list button's text has changed to blue to indicate that the selection has occurred. We'll go through the same steps to select an employee, and now that we've filled out the required fields, the Enter Time button is now enabled. Tapping on the Enter Time button shifts the button down and changes the text color, all via CSS. The login window disappears by sliding off to the left, revealing the main timesheet entry screen. This animation was also accomplished with CSS. The next screen contains the main form, allowing us to enter information for selected employees and post their hours. Tapping on the Job BBJ list box brings up the trusty Select control again. After selecting an option, we can continue filling out the form by tapping on the Previous or Next buttons on the picker control. This moves the focus to the subsequent BBJ list buttons on the form and allows for fast data entry. The active BBJ list button changes its background color from a light gray to a light blue with CSS to provide visual feedback on which control we're affecting. After filling out the remainder of the fields, we're finally brought to the time fields. This allows us to specify the number of regular, overtime, and double time hours worked. These are also BBJ list button controls, but they're styled in a radically different manner to simulate an LCD screen. Selecting different values from the picker changes the digital readout on the form. And again, the active field is indicated by lighting up with a brighter background and text. This digital font, as well as others used in this app, are implemented with custom CSS that defines the font family, text shadows, color, stroke width and color, text indentation, and more. Once we're done filling out the form, we can post the entry with one more tap. We're also able to review timesheet entries for employees by tapping on the Review button. This slides the entry screen out of the way to reveal an hourly report for the last few workdays. The report is constructed from CSS-styled HTML that is loaded into a BBJ HTML view control. The CSS uses a special font along with colors to format the report as though it were an old-fashioned green bar paper printout. Selecting a different employee from the upper list allows us to view hourly totals for other employees in the company, and the report changes its title and content accordingly. So that's a look at how we used custom CSS to augment an existing BUI application. The app was already functional, but the CSS gave the interface some polish, as well as providing valuable visual feedback for user actions, such as button presses, and highlighting the active control.
And there you have it. To use the words of Apple's own marketing blurb, it is stunning. It is simply gorgeous. Can you imagine your Business Basic app looking like that, running on a mobile device? Well, now you can. So that's what it looked like beforehand with our password entry, and that's what it looks like now. We took the timesheet entry with the various BBJ list buttons and we render it like this. Results of timesheet data can be rendered like a green bar printout, a little bit of retro, in a very modern looking app. So let's summarize the benefits for EMQUE's customers. These solutions are immediately cost justifiable because they reduce paperwork, they save enormous amounts of costs, they increase efficiency and improve cash flow. Improve the user experience. The mobile device flexibility of BUI is that you can deploy on a tablet or a smartphone. And the great publicity for your business is enormous. The industry is talking about you and about your applications and the benefits that you give to your customers. Before we take your questions, a reminder, we'd love to share your successes with your peer group. So if you have a success story to share, please contact your account manager. Some good news is we have an Advantage magazine coming up. It'll be the bumper biggest ever edition that we've produced. It has some 35 articles. So we're wrapping that publication up and you should see it being delivered either in your mail or in your inbox in electronic format very shortly. So look out for this and other really good stories to be delivered in the next Advantage magazine. And of course, Basis TechCon 2013 in Las Vegas, Nevada. Mark your calendars now, May 13th to the 15th for the TechCon, to be followed by training on the 16th and 17th. Let's take your questions.